Okay. Hey guys, sorry for being so late. I'd hoped to be starting this live stream a few hours ago, but rain delay and transportation issues, and here we are now. And where is here? We are on Hilton Head Island, often just referred to as Hilton Head. Has a great tradition, a great history, and we're going to talk a little bit about it for a little while right now. So if you are just tuning in, hi, I'm Chris Sandeman, and I'm going to be your fearless commentator, not so much a guide, because this is my first time here as well. So if you are like me and this is also your first time, then I'm very happy to have you. Hi, Jenny. Appreciate the Purple Heart. Always good to see you. If you are watching on Facebook, then go ahead and hit that heart, hit that thumbs up, go ahead and comment, say hello. Hey, Michaela, thanks for saying hi on YouTube. If you are over on YouTube, go ahead and just like this video, whether you're watching it live or you are watching it later on as video on demand, you might as well. And Tage, good to see you, brother. Yes, I do have the umbrella on my back, like I sometimes do. So thank you guys for joining. And first off, we're gonna go and explore some old ruins over here at the Stony Baynard Ruins. Hey Edward, saludos regresa to you as well. It's great that we have a multilingual, multicultural organization here, because this island has been fought over by Europeans since the beginning of sort of its recorded history. And from, you know, the clearly the Native Americans have been here for thousands of years before Europeans arrived, but you would have French, British, Spanish, excuse me, as well, Spanish first, then British, even Scots, fighting over this place because of its great strategic importance. And this island, which is a barrier island in half-truth. A barrier island is an island that forms when you have shifting sands and sandbanks that then end up forming a protective area that shifts as well when you have big storms. But this is also a sea island, so it is also like a natural occurring island that doesn't change location dependent upon storms. It's both at the same time, so to say. So. All right, I did a walkthrough already once to make sure that I was going to have bandwidth. It looked good, so let's continue and see, you know, what works and what doesn't work. Hey Rebecca, thanks for joining. All right, so here we are, and we are entering into an area that used to be a plantation, in fact, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. As we come up to some old ruins that are here for us to explore. So these ruins form what was part of the Braddock's Point Plantation. That's what we're heading up to here, and they were built in the first half of the 18th century. Braddock's Point covered the southern end of present-day sea pines, which, if you take a look, give you a feeling. All right, you get a little bit of a map action there. And the inset map is South Carolina, and we are in that red section. And that red section blown up shows you Hilton Head, Hilton Head Island, which looks kind of like a shoe. We are down at the toe of the shoe, if you will. And just in case you were wondering, there's your Hilton Head, South Carolina town logo. 1663, 1983. I wonder if they changed it in 1983. But it's still here today, and it's been many, many things, including the first place that you grew Sea Island cotton was first grown here as a crop, and it would go on to be very important because Sea Island cotton specifically has these long, luxurious strands, these fibers that come together, and that makes it really valuable. Tage asks, "Is this your new house being built behind you?" Not this building in front of me, but the building behind back there, where there's that wooden construction. It is not my new house. No, no new homes for this guy so far. Well, anyway, Braddock's Point Plantation. So originally, this building construction would have been built by Captain John Saucy Jack Stoney. And it was built between 1793 and 1810. What you're actually looking here at is what they call Tabby, like a cat, but it is actually a mixture of oyster shells, lime, sand, and water, which comes together to then form these interior blocks. You can see a kind of a dowel hole here, because the way that the tabby would be constructed is that they would layer in kind of wooden frames that you'd pour the tabby in, so that way it could, you could pour the tabby in, it would harden and set, and then you would take stucco and you would layer it or plaster it on the outside of the now formed tabby blocks, and they would cut whole, kind of markings or cuttings into the stucco, so that way it looked like it was actually brick. This building burned down in 1867, so after the Civil War as well and truly done for a couple of years. I'm not going to cross into the actual space because I don't want to disturb what is a national site. Yes, Tage, looks like oyster shells are definitely true. Here, take a quick look at this, guys. You kind of, the entrance to the plantation house would have looked like. So you would have had this kind of tabby foundation, and then you would have had wood paneling up above. They're not exactly sure of the proportions. They weren't working off of blueprints. They're just kind of doing anthropological, archaeological ideas as to what's happening here. Hey, Nikki, good to see you. Yeah, very much recovered from last night. Actually, I didn't get to sleep very quickly because I'd had one beer and I ended up being quite awake because I'd had a coffee in the afternoon. So it took me a little while to finally fall asleep. But really interesting talking to people. If you guys haven't seen the video from last night, I did an interview up and down in Charleston's King Street, asking a fair number of younger out partygoers if they'd been vaccinated or not, and if so, why, and if not, why. So, hey Sarah, good to see you. Now, hopefully I'll have continued good connectivity here, so we'll be able to not lose touch with each other. And my plan and goal is to walk from these ruins over to the central marina of Harbour Town and take a look at that lighthouse. We'll go see where Charles Fraser is memorialized and buried, who was the founder of sort of the modern day, if you will, the modern day Hilton Head, the resort community that you have here now of Sea Pine, and then the rest of the development of Hilton Head, which doesn't really start until the 1950s. So going back in time, though, we're back in the 1830s when this plantation was well and working and producing a Sea Island cotton. But the great Saucy Jack Stoney had two sons, James and John, and they inherited the dwelling and the outbuildings and the slaves that were owned by this plantation space. Tage asks, how far from Charleston is it down here? It's about 2 hours from Charleston to Hilton Head. But there was a fair amount of unexpected rain, although if we look up now, we can see through the Spanish moss and through these live oaks. You can see that actually is a mixture of cloud and then some blue sky poking through as well, which is lovely. Well, unfortunately, the sons, James and John, didn't do a great job, and eventually when after James had passed away, his brother John had declared bankruptcy and sold his property to the Bank of Charleston. And this property, which we're on right now, then ended up being bought up by a gentleman by the name of Williams Eddings Baynard, who was from Edisto Island, not too far from here, also a planter. And he purchased Braddock's Point Plantation from the bank in 1845 and added it to the rest of his plantations that were here. Now, he stayed owning this area until, so we're talking about 1845. It was in his possession until the Civil War, when the Union ends up coming and setting up a headquarters here on Hilton Head Island, which they would use to help enforce the blockade. And the Great Blockade that circled the Confederacy by the Union would starve the Confederacy of two things. One, it would starve them of the ability to export highly valuable cotton, including Sea Island cotton, like the cotton that was being grown here. The second thing that would happen is that it prevented the Confederacy from being able to import salt. And salt was not something that had previously been produced in large quantities in the Confederacy. In fact, most salt in the country going into the 1850s, 1860s came from Syracuse, New York, in the loyal state of New York, where there was a ancient dried out lake bed, which had lots of salt water in there. Sarah writes, my family from Canada often holiday in Hilton Head. So interested to see it after hearing the name a lot. Yeah, great. I mean, Hilton Head is quite spread out, as it would be because of the plantation nature of Hilton Head. And that means that we're only going to see a limited chunk of it right now. And we've started kind of back in history, and then we're going to kind of move forward in history chronologically a little bit if we can, and cover a bit of it. And it's my first trip here too, so it's been interesting. Now, what we're looking at here, and what I've just walked around as I've been kind of giving you guys a bit of history, is an old slave quarters. And amazingly, this space would have been home for two families. And down the middle of the space, there would have been a divider, and then you would have had kind of let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. You'd have a family on this side and a family on that side. And I can tell you, it's not a lot of room. You can see the remains of a chimney there, and another fireplace over there to keep the space warm. So, but also with that same Tabby, oh, here we go, a little bit of a photo, and you can see how those slave quarters would have been broken up. Well, we're going to walk over and take a look at another. Yes, Tage writes, it's crazy tight, such a tragedy. Yep, no, slavery is a horrible tragedy. And ironically, it's part of the reason why, in the end, despite the United Kingdom being so dependent upon cotton imports from these early United States pre-Civil War. In fact, 5/6 of all the cotton that was being imported into the United Kingdom was coming from the U.S., states, the states that would eventually form the Confederacy for the most part. And there were over 1 million jobs in the United Kingdom in the 1860s that were dependent upon the cotton industry. And turning it into manufactured product like clothing, textiles, and such. So it's a tough one. But because of the slavery question of it, it's argued it was one of the despite like the huge economic impact of not having the cotton production coming in, it was the reason why the UK ends up declaring that the Confederacy is the belligerent in the war, and partially part of the reason, it doesn't enter into the war on the side of the Confederacy. A couple of Union victories also helped turn the tide on that, but there's no doubt that the blockade that the Union is able to enforce which in the beginning, in 1861-62, was pretty poorly effective, but got better and better over time, forcing actually a sort of evolution of naval warfare. Because the blockade was doing such a good job of keeping imports from coming in and out of the Confederacy, Confederacy responded by creating a new sort of naval warfare using torpedo boats, which would be fast, light boats that could, with a kind of a spear with an explosive device on the end of it, be rammed into larger, heavy capital ships, big frigates, right? And those big frigates, which were like floating fortresses with, you know, the biggest ship of the line of all time, perhaps, the Santa Ana in Spain, had 112 cannons on board, 112, 50 to 60 cannons per broadside, if you can imagine that. And that big lumbering boat could move into a harbor and shell the heck out of a fortress or a fort, you know, do a lot of damage. But it wasn't very mobile. So if you could get to it with a torpedo boat, right, a boat with an explosive rod at the end of it, then you'd be able to explode along the water line or below the water line and then take down a much bigger, more expensive ship. And in fact, the first boats that were then created to defend against torpedo boats were known as torpedo boat destroyers. Eventually, they just shortened that and they call them destroyers. And that's what a modern naval convoy will be made up of, right? Capital ships, the big, you know, your big aircraft carrier or a big battleship or something. But then you'd have destroyers around it to protect the big capital ship. So what we're looking at here is where the old cooking kitchen would have been. The kitchen would have been here, and got the kitchen chimney. And that's actually very typical of the days, because if we look now back past the chimney, and we can see all the way back along past the slave quarters in the distance, we see the actual original home way out there, right? And why is it so far away? A couple of reasons. You've got cooking smells, you've got noise, right? And you also have the potential for fire. Now, one of the advantages of Tabby is that Tabby is non-flammable, because once you've already burned it into lime and sand and such, then it doesn't burn anymore. So it was a very effective building product. But as we saw in that original house, Tabby foundation, and then it would have had wooden siding throughout of it. So it still makes sense to keep it away from the kitchen. And then the noise and the smell and the rest of it. You know, there's consideration for the slave quarters that would have been, you know, here and there, and many more, because this is just a small example of part of the slave quarters. The plantation here, I believe, owned over 160 slaves, enslaved people. So, well, originally, actually, you didn't have Sea Island cotton. We're gonna head through here. I've scoped it out. I'm pretty sure I can get back to the main road, and we're gonna leave this old plantation area. We'll talk a little bit more about the history, and we're gonna walk through modern day Hilton Head as we head over to Harbour Town. And just in the back of our heads, remember that the reason why we have all of this land, and you know, over 70% of Hilton Head is still covered in trees, like we see all around us. I mean, it feels like a primordial forest around me here. The reason why that exists is because of Charles E. Fraser. And he was an environmentalist who then, when he decides to set up Sea Pines, the first resort here in those 50s, he's dedicated to the idea of making sure that it's environmentally low impact. Guys, that's pretty forward thinking for back in those days. But seriously, pretty great stuff. And he's the one that ends up eventually buying this 9-acre plot that we're walking away from right now, and just saying, we're not going to build anything here, because this is just going to stay like this. We're going to keep these ruins this way. Now, I am going to pull out my phone with my other hand and quickly just make sure I'm going the right direction. I need to go, I can go this way. Great. Okay. Tage, you're right. Canada has the Underground Railroad history. Huge success mostly. Yeah, I have to be honest. I don't know a lot specifically about the Underground Railroad, other than quite topically about it. But you had here at Hilton Head, after the Union takes the island, I think it was August of 1961, and they start using it as a base of operations for the blockade, specifically the blockade of Savannah and Charleston harbors, whilst of course you also had other blockades taking place in Mobile and New Orleans, these being amongst the four most important harbors for the Confederacy to kind of strangle the Confederacy's finances. That it wasn't really just about like catching ships, although the Union ended up, once it had ramped up to around 500 blockade ships as it expands its own navy, it ends up destroying somewhere around 1,500 Confederate ships. It wasn't so much the ships they destroyed, it was more the ships that they prevented from ever coming this way or coming into the harbors, because unless you were a small, pretty fast ship, you just couldn't outrun the blockade ships. And so it would mean that the ships that could be used for the Confederacy to run the blockade would need to be light or loaded very lightly, which would of course make them less effective. Hey Ross, good to see you, brother. Hope you're doing well. Good to see you. Come on, phone, stop it. Hard to walk and do the whole thing. All right, so somewhere along here, I need to sneak over onto a golf course to get myself back over to where I'm going. Now, what you can tell quite clearly is that Hilton Head, the old buildings from the 1800s are now ruins, and what we're seeing here now is a much more modern community that's been built up since the 1950s, 1960s. I mean, these houses are even more. It does strike me as a community that has a fair amount of timeshare influence as well, but it's gorgeous. It's a lot of the old history here is harder to see. The Tabby, unfortunately, whilst being fireproof, is not moisture proof, and as it gets wet, it deteriorates, and hence we've lost a lot of that stuff, haven't we now? Yes, Tage says the forest is very lush and stunning. I agree, man. You've got, just gorgeous, beautiful live oaks and that sort of Spanish moss that we've come familiar with. We are actually in Beaufort County right now, and Beaufort is where we had the great pleasure of going on a couple of tours with Bill Reynolds. Bill, who's in France right now, or else we'd probably be swinging through Beaufort and doing another tour with the good man. Now, I found a path through between a couple of these buildings, just trying to figure out where it was. I'm going to use the same path if I can and not get myself into too much trouble. Trespassing, as the case may be. I'm pretty sure I should have written this down. What number was I at? I feel good about bear with me. This house looks not too busy. Let's see if I can sneak by these guys and make my way. We'll go this way. Now, this is not the way that I came last time. Ooh, a spider web, no good. No bueno. No bueno. Under the spider web goes Chris. Ah, good. Looks like we found a path here as we make our way back to the golf course. Now, golf is worth just quickly touching on here because it's part of the more modern history of you know, Hilton Head, because the Heritage Golf Classic was first played here at the Sea Pines Resort in 1969, and ever since, this has been a stop on the PGA Tour. Now, I'm just gonna go for it, aren't I? Yep, I'm the guy not on the golf course. It's not me. Sorry about that. I know I'm a little crazy. I'm just trying to get across. Thank you. Yeah. A caddy was unhappy with my decision here. You know what? I like golf as a sport. I think as a concept, it's awesome. I think it's pretty amazing that it originates in Scotland, which makes it really cool. But it also does seem like an unnecessary usage of land to have so many golf courses. And at a time where water is more and more important, it's a lot of grass to keep green. What do you guys think? Golf courses? Do we need more of them, less of them, or are we just doing right with the number of golf courses that we have? Ross, yeah, it was a really interesting experience. You know, I said at one point, that the gentleman by the fountain that I was at, that he was referring to the Tuscaloosa experiments. That's not right. It was Tuskegee. Tuskegee was the syphilis experiments, where African American men were being told that they were actually being treated for syphilis, and in fact they were being given placebos to measure for the doctors and scientists to evaluate what happens to you when you are untreated for syphilis. And that was after they'd already figured out penicillin and how it works, and that it, fixed it, or at least made huge inroads or treated syphilis. So, hey guys, I'd missed the comment from Ramon, who after having listened to the veteran with the potty mouth, said that he was not going to get vaccinated because he didn't want to be magnetized by the, I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but didn't want to be magnetized by the vaccine, which is a debunked conspiracy theory, of course. That Ramon wrote in to say that he was going to the Veterans Affairs Hospital, the VA, to get vaccinated. So if nothing else, we got one more person to go get vaccinated last night with that live stream, and hopefully we'll get more and more people. We'll see it that way, because every person who's unvaccinated, whether they get sick or they don't get sick, if they have the virus in them percolating through, it's just one more test tube for the virus to maybe mutate and become something else, which is not good. Not good. Tage, you're talking about Keyballs, right? Amanda Keyballs, I think was her name. And I never found Amanda Keyballs. Yeah, who knows where she ended up. So, not a lot of history throughout this space that we're walking through, because as you can see, it's a lot of more modern construction and dwellings as we head over to Charles Fraser's Harbour Town and Marina. But in between Charles Fraser and his development and when this place was a plantation area, you had a different time period. And this is not the best resolution photo, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller to show you these guys here. And these were the beach pounders, because Hilton Head Island was part of the coastal defense of the U.S., which, let's see, I think we can go this way. Wait. No, I go this way. The Beach Pounders were part of the coastal defense, and they were U.S. Coast Guard troops. Who would have guessed the U.S. Coast Guard had a cavalry? But they did. And the Beach Pounders on horseback would ride up and down Hilton Head Island looking for distressed ships, but as well as we went into World War II, a potential Axis attack of our seaboard. And that's always been the way that the U.S. is, a little bit reactionary, right? You kind of wait for something bad to happen and then decide we should fix it. And the War of 1812, the burning of the White House in 1814, in response to, speaking of Canada, Tage, some United States actions into Canada, which led to a response as it could do. We started building forts up and down the eastern seaboard, and to improve our defense. And it's hard not to. I've been thinking a lot about what's happened in Miami today. Oops, let me turn this off. We don't need these guys anymore. Sorry. It's been hard not to be thinking about what's happened in Miami and the absolute tragedy of the apartment building in Surfside collapsing. All right, so here we can already start to get a view of the incredibly iconic, recognizable, often symbol of Hilton Head itself, which is that lighthouse up there. And you can go up on top of it and get a great view around. And I think it's probably the most visited touristic destination here in Hilton Head, because it's definitely a peaceful, relaxed life here. Lots of beaches. A fair number of famous people have summer residences here, or residences here that they use when they do, including 3 very nice Chicagoans, Chi-towners, I don't know, who I met when I was doing a little bit of an exploration before, and they explained some of the ghost story history, that apparently the lighthouse is supposed to be haunted by our friend Charles E. Fraser himself. Now, I don't believe that to be true, because if you do believe in ghosts, and I'm not saying that I do or I don't, but if you do, the or torturous death not die on this island resting places, but he actually passed in 2002 at the ripe old age of 73. Charles E. Fraser, there's got to be a connection, right? And I'll tell you right now, he went to Yale University. Went to Yale. Georgetown undergraduate. Okay. Yale Law School graduate school. But he, at 73, was still working, and he was down in Turks and Caicos doing some consulting, and his boat blew up that he was on. Explosion, untimely death. So I could totally believe that he is haunting somewhere, but I think it's an island down there. And if that is the case, well then, bless you, Charles E. Fraser. Turks and Caicos is a nicer place to haunt than Hilton Head with its humidity. Although I guess you have an equal chance of getting hit by hurricanes. And actually, a lot of the buildings that had been here that were antebellum houses from before the Civil War were destroyed in an absolutely awful hurricane that passed through in 1893 and first crashed into Savannah and then made its way right up into the South Carolinas, killing more than 1,000 people and forcing a surge, like a tide surge, of around 6 meters, like 15 feet, I guess it was, they said, so 5 point something meters, which is a lot. And an island like this gets swamped by that. And Tage, you were saying before about that house that could have been mine that we saw in the very beginning behind me. One thing I noticed about it is that it had a very, very high concrete block foundation, and that the building itself was being built now almost 2 full meters above ground level. So you can see that they're planning for tide surge to some extent. Tage writes, Canada vaccine rate in the world now, more than 75% of adults. I doubt it's the highest in the world. There are some islands of small population vaccine rate, but of any major country, or with the population size of Canada, I believe that Canada is doing probably a great job. Makes me really happy to hear that, because I love you Canadians. It's always great to hear positive things, especially with Canada Day coming up so close to now. So this is the Liberty Oak. It is a live oak, not an angel oak, because none of the boughs touch the ground. But it's because of this tree that the marina here is not a full circle, which is what was supposed to be the case here in Harbour Town. Instead, you have a sort of a horseshoe shape, kind of coming around through the marina, which is manatee, not infested, but inhabited. That's the word I was looking for. We love manatees, therefore they inhabit. If they were cockroaches, they'd be infesting. And when our buddy Charles Fraser realizes that if they build the real circle of a marina, they're going to have to cut right through to finish the circle, right through here and through the live oak, he says, no, ain't gonna happen. And they make it a semicircle instead. Here he is, Charles E. Fraser, Yale graduate extraordinaire. 1957, at the age of 27, Fraser completed his 6-year research program and began building the 8-square-mile Sea Pines Plantation community. It was the island's first large-scale planned community and the site of its first golf course and tennis facilities. Dun, dun, dun. Anyway, the plaque goes on. But Charles E. Fraser, 1929, 2002, he went about doing good. Yeah, he seemed like a really good guy. Environmental philanthropist. And this is has been a gathering site and center of community here for a long time. There's a famous singer who comes and sings here on a regular basis. Someone who's, but that's what all of this setup is, and the stage space below, because this is where Greg Russell comes together and provides family entertainment. A kid-friendly singer. So, yeah, there you go. Well, there's actually a ton more history about the space from, which I didn't even really touch on, like the Gullah Geechees, who are the freed descent who end up escaping in large numbers here to Hilton Head Island during the Civil War and set up their own communities. It's actually some of those Gullah Geechee descendants that Pat Conroy goes to teach in The Water is Wide in Tuskegee Island, where Bill tried to do a live stream from and unfortunately didn't end up working out for us. But we're still gonna try to get that in the future. Tage writes, reminds me of the symbol of Avatar. Right, yeah. Except I'd have to be able to go and like grab onto those tendrils of Spanish moss and plug them into my tail so I could then speak with the tree. But I like that. It's a good insight. But guys, that's just been a quick taste of Hilton Head. I've got a lot more that I want to show you guys today. We're going to be heading to Savannah shortly. I'm going to grab a quick taco and then get back on the road. And we're heading to the Savannah waterfront. So I can show you that, show you where those pirates used to hang out, and ghosts for sure. A lot of old passageways. Some of them have been blocked up, some of them haven't. And the Savannah River. So I'm not exactly sure how long it's going to be before I'm doing the next live stream, but you know how it is. If you see the notification and it's the timing is good for you, join, say hi, and if not, well then you catch it later on, you know, on the flip side. So it's always a pleasure. I don't want to end suddenly, but I am going to end. So why don't we just walk over here towards this space. It looks like there's a cold beer waiting for me already. So Michaela, Prost. I hope everyone's football wishes are coming true over the next day. And I feel like a marathon runner here. Here I come, marathon runner, marathon runner. Boom. Do a quick cheers. Cheers, thank you. Guys, enjoy the rest of your weekend, but hopefully I'll see you in a little while. Oh, that's nice and cold. It's hard for you to tell, but I am, because no joke. So if you haven't hit that like button on YouTube already, do it. Hearts, thumbs ups over on Facebook. Always a pleasure. Nikki, Ross, I hope you guys are having a great weekend. Mwah. Wish you guys amazing things. And yes, Tage, I do know that guy. That's my brother. That's my brother there. That's why we keep going back to the Coast Guard again and again these days, because he used to be in the Coast Guard. So I do know him. Happy to introduce. Hale, miss you. I want to see you. We got to do a little bit of, we got to get that gallery in. Michaela, danke sehr. Prost, zum Wohl zu jeden. And I think I've said hi and goodbye. Sarah. All right, great. Cheers, guys. Have a good little bit of time. I'm gonna grab a bite and we'll see you again from Savannah. Ciao. Hot. I think the black hat's a mistake for today.